So after sewing all the 3 layers, this is what we have. So this is 3 layers so far. Another way to know that you have enough layers is when the satin under is not showing. So here now at the 3rd layer, we can still see through the soft net to the satin. You can obviously still see where the satin is sitting. So next we are going on to the 4th and final layer. This part we're supposed to iron into 2. So if you iron yours into 2, you will have a crease in the middle. That's quite obvious. If you didn't, then you measure like I'm doing and then sew in the middle. So it's still the gather stitch that we are using. Remember when we're joining the next to the satin, it was no longer the gather stitch. It was no longer the lowest part, but this one now is for the gather, so our machine is still set to the longest stitch. So I'm using my tape measuring to 7 inches, that is the middle. So you can mark, but chalk will not, the net will not really pick the chalk. The chalk will be on the surface, but you won't see it on the net. So it's best to measure or iron to get that crease in the middle, like I said before. So we're going to gather this 11 yards into 2 yards. So this 11 yards is going to be attached to 2 yards. So we are reducing 11 yards to 2 yards. So I keep sewing, making sure I'm sewing in the middle, exactly in the middle of this, until we'll exhaust all the 11 yards. Now if you don't want this tear defect on your dress, you can simply just gather the remaining layer onto the dress like we did the first 3 and you're good to go. All of this will not be necessary. There won't be any need to divide the 7 yards into 5 yards and 2 yards. You just cut your 7 yards into 4 layers and attach to your dress and you're good to go. So now I am gathering after sewing the 11 yards, so that is reduced to 2 yards. So you just gather and check with your tape to be sure that you have the width that you need. Now this is the 2 yards. Remember we cut out 7.5 inches at the beginning time. So we are going to be joining this down part to this 2 yards. So what we're going to do is measure ½ inch. So this other piece is going to sit on that ½ inch. So ½ inch in from the edge, and then the midpoint of this other piece will sit on top of it. You're going to see in a bit. So this is the 7.5. Place this one over it, 5 inch, ½ inch from the edge, and so it's not gather stitch you're using here. You're using your regular stitch. You're going to back stitch at the beginning and also back stitch at the end, making sure it's tight. So as you're sewing, you're adjusting, making sure that that midpoint is sitting on ½ inch before the edge of that 7.5 inches one. And as you're sewing, you adjust your gathers so that everything is clean. You sew and adjust. There's no rush, like I said. You keep sewing and adjusting and sewing and adjusting until we get to the other end. So when you're done sewing, this is what you have. Just push everything back to the down. So the part that was open, just close it up like so using your hand all the way. So push everything back with your hand like so, and it's all going to relax. After that, we are going to go back now at the top and make a gather stitch. We are going to gather this piece now over the other three that we have gathered already. So set your machine back to the longest stitch. That's the most loose on your machine. And then we are going to make gathers the same way we did the first three. Gather it to that 26 inches and place it over the first three like we have been doing. That way we now have 4 layers of net. So after gathering, this is what we have. It's what it's looking like. Both the first and the second tier together. So now we are going to place it over like so. That's what we have been doing. So we're going to adjust as usual, pin before we go and sew, so we don't make any mistake. So after sewing, we have something like this. Next, now we are going to join them by the side. So remember we have 4 layers. We are going to locate all 4, arrange them properly by the side, and then sew. So that way we have one piece. We don't have these net pieces hanging. So make sure you count. I'm making sure that I have 4 pieces of net at that point. So once I have them, I will sew them down. That way we now have one piece. The satin piece and all the 4 layers will now be one. So when you get to the bottom layer, you know we have the second tier there. So once we get to the bottom, we are now counting 5 and not 4 anymore. So make sure you pick all of them. It's very easy to miss one. So when you know the layers that you have, you make sure that what you are counting is the number of layers you have, so that all of them can be sewn together to form one piece. Also, do not pull, do not drag, do not, just gently arrange them together and sew. We are going to repeat the same thing for the second side. Count your net pieces, make sure you have the number that you are supposed to have, and then sew them together with the satin piece. That way everything is one. Please take your time. This can be stressful, but it's very doable. So after that, now it's time to join it to the upper bodies. So you can go ahead now, pin it together and go sew, or trim the excess at the top. Trim the net. It's very tricky. Anything can go wrong at this point, so be very, very careful as you trim. Do not rush this process at all. If not, you can easily catch what you're not supposed to catch, and that will be the end. You have to start afresh. So trim a bit of the excess and then pin them together. So pinning, you're making sure that the net is not folding over. You don't have the net folding up. Pin, and make sure that the same allowances are pinned apart. Another thing is that you are pinning only on the main fabric. You're not pinning the lining. See that the lining piece is hanging far away. So just take your time and pin. And also as you're pinning, make sure that you are taking off your pins when you're done. You don't want to leave pins inside the baby's clothes. That would not be nice at all. So as you're pinning, make sure you're taking them out. Also, I measured half inch to be sure that I am holding that with half inch, because later on when we fix the zipper, it will have to match at that point. So you make sure of it at this stage. Just measure half inch and make sure that your seam allowances are half inch on one end, and when you get to the other end they are also half inch, so you don't have that seam one part of it higher than the other after attaching your zipper. Also, your seam allowances on the inside, that's the upper part, should be sewn apart.